Hello everyone, welcome to this channel. So today's topic of discussion, it's on the topic inflammation and repair. Inflammation and repair, okay? Recently admitted first year students find this topic very difficult from the perspective of pathology. But I'll try to make it really very simple for you guys so that you can understand, okay? So inflammation, whenever we talk about inflammation, we see that inflammation is actually a pathological condition, okay? Pathological. But remember inflammation, it's actually, it's if it is pathological if it is in excess. If it is in excess, for example, whenever we talk about liver, okay, liver. Now a normal healthy liver and a liver which is inflamed because of certain, suppose HPV, hepatitis, okay, so this is a pathological inflammation. But whenever you have certain injury in your body, for example, you have a twist in your feet, a twist in your feet, okay, a twist in your feet. Now because of that there is something swollen, it's a bit swollen. So that swollenness is because of something which is known as an exudate. It's because of something which is known as an exudate. Now we have an exudate and we have a transudate. Okay, transudate. Exudate is high in protein fluid, high in protein. It's a fluid which is high in protein, and transudate is a fluid which is not that high in the protein, but it consists of certain amount of protein. Now let's come to the topic proper. Okay, let's come to the topic proper. Now inflammation, it's if it is in excess, it is a pathological. If it's a normal condition, like if there is an injury and you're having certain type of inflammation, then that is a physiological response. It's a physiological response to restore the normal function. Now the exact definition is inflammation is the response of vascularized tissue to infections and tissue damage that brings cells and molecules of the host defenses from the circulation to the site where they are needed to eliminate the offending agents. Okay? So what are the different components that should come in your definition? The different components that should come in your definition. Number one, it should come that it is a response. It is a response, okay? Number two, it should come a vascularized tissue, in vascularized tissue. Now what do you mean by vascularized and avascularized? Vascularized means which is highly supplied by the blood vessels. Okay, highly supplied by the blood vessels. For example, in the avascular tissue, for example, in your nail, okay, or hair. Whenever you cut your hair or whenever you cut your nail, you're not going to have inflammation. But if it is involving the nail bed, then there might be the inflammation. If you have a certain cut or injury, there might be a certain inflammation for certain days. And here the word host defenses. The definition that I've spoken right before is from Robbins. So this host defenses, what do you mean by this host defenses? So I would like to make you clear that this host defenses is basically the components like neutrophils and macrophages. Okay, I will not go to eosinophils, basophils, because this is like, this comes under the topic of like eosinophils. It increased in the case of allergic reaction, and these are also component of the host defenses. With no doubt, these are also the component of the host defenses, but the major one being the neutrophils and the macrophages. Neutrophils are basically involved in the case of acute inflammation, which is the acute in onset, okay? And macrophages are basically responsible for the chronic inflammation, okay? Now you need to remember, now I've talked about acute and chronic. Now you might have a question, so what is this acute and chronic? Okay, acute and chronic. We have two entities. Now acute is, it's acute in onset. That means as soon as the injury occurs, you will have an inflammation, and that will subside. Okay, but in chronic inflammation it is like it might come from acute, or this chronic it might arise de novo. Now what is de novo? By its own. Okay, it means like it is arising as a new aspect, okay, as a new aspect. So this is known as chronic inflammation. Are you getting this point? Okay. Now remember that acute inflammation is for short duration. Short duration. And chronic inflammation is for longer duration. Longer duration. And in chronic inflammation, always following chronic inflammation, there is something which is known as repair. So always following chronic inflammation, there is repair. But there is not like associated repair with the acute inflammation. And the most important, which should never be missed, is acute inflammation is associated with neutrophils, and chronic inflammation is associated with the macrophages. Are we getting this point? I hope we are clear till here. Now let's move on to the other aspects. Now remember one thing, that there are certain cardinal features of inflammation. So which is termed as inflammation, which is not termed as inflammation, that comes from the cardinal features of inflammation. Okay, the cardinal features of inflammation. So the cardinal features of inflammation comes like rubor, dolor, calor, tumor, and functionalesa. Now this functionalesa, it was actually coded in the 19th century by Rudolf Virchow. Okay, so rubor means redness, dolor means pain, calor means heat, tumor means inflammation. Now this tumor, actually we tell that neoplasia is also a tumor, and this is also a tumor. Actually this word was given lately, but neoplasia as a tumor, this is like initial. So basically the cardinal features, if anywhere you see the cardinal features, you should never miss rubor, dolor, calor, tumor, and functionalesa. Functionalesa is the latest one. Next, what are the causes of inflammation? What are the causes? The very first cause being the infection. Certain bacteria and viruses, fungi. Number 2 is dead tissue. So what can we say this as? Tissue necrosis. Number 3 being the foreign bodies. Actually the foreign bodies and infection, it's like a bit similar. And number 4 is immune reactions. Now I'll explain every point, don't worry. Remember, the very first point we're talking about the infection. So any bacteria, any viruses, suppose this is your bacteria, this is your virus, a bit bigger one, okay? Now this comes to your body, but only a component of this is being recognized, and this is known as PAMPS. What is this? Pathogen associated molecular patterns. Now this PAMPS will now be recognized by a cell with its receptor, which is known as the TLR. This is known as the toll-like receptors. By any cell, by any particular cell. For example, if that particular, suppose if this is a hepatitis B virus, it will have affinity for its hepatocytes, For example, if this is your example, okay, I would say, okay, candida. Now this will infect your reproductive organs. So this will be more focused on your epithelial cells of the genitalias, okay, candidas. So any cell, all the cells, they express these Toll-like receptors that detect the pathogen-associated molecular patterns. Okay. Next is the dead tissues. Now, this dead tissues or tissue debris, it's not actually expressed. It's not actually, detected by the Toll-like receptors, but rather the dead tissues are being detected. The dead tissues are being detected by a special type of receptors, and these are actually known as the nod-like receptors. Nod-like receptors. Okay, that detect the dead tissues, tissue debris. And remember, the next thing is foreign bodies. Foreign bodies, like whenever you will be studying the respiratory system in the upcoming days, you will be learning about pneumoconiosis. Pneumoconiosis, okay? This pneumoconiosis is basically because of certain components from the, external world, like the coal or the silica, okay? Coal, silica, etc. Now, this is actually also involving in the inflammatory aspect. So they're also taken. And remember, immune response. Immune response means we are talking about the hypersensitivity reaction. Now, what is this hypersensitivity? This is a very new term to you. See, what do you hyper mean? Hyper means more, okay? Sensitive means, like, if I touch you, suppose if this is a body, if this touches you, you'll have 3 spots. Suppose you'll have 3 spots. But in hypersensitized individuals, if this touches the body, they'll have 1,000 of spots. 1000x, okay? Now, why is this happening in our body, and what is this? Actually, this is all the immune reactions. For example, different immune conditions. I'll talk about the different immune conditions, like rheumatoid arthritis, rheumatic heart disease. I can also talk about certain allergic conditions, and then we have urticaria, which is the component of the allergy conditions, right? This is all rheumatoid arthritis, rheumatic heart disease. This rheumatic arthritis and rheumatic heart disease is autoimmune process, and this is all the inflammatory conditions. And you can remember the causes by the mnemonics FITS, fits, okay? F is foreign bodies, I is immune reaction, T is tissue necrosis, and S means infections, okay? Infections. S, infections. Got it? To make it clear, I've just made a small for that easiness. Now, I was talking about a very, very important aspect over here. A very, very important aspect. Now, this is being recognized by these Toll-like receptors, right? Now, what will these Toll-like receptors do? This Toll-like receptors will trigger an internalized pathway to stimulate the inflasome. The inflasome pathway. And after the triggering of the inflasome pathway, it will actually be triggering the release of interleukin-1. And this interleukin-1 is the major trigger of any inflammation, Are you getting this point? So what did I tell you? The pathogen-associated molecular patterns detected by the Toll-like receptors. The inflasome will detect it, interleukin-1, and this is the major trigger of any kind of inflammation. Okay? Now, different other components are also there. For example, certain circulating proteins, which comes on the component of the complementary aspect. Complementary system. We'll learn in detail about this, so I don't want to go to this one. The major aspect now I would like to come is acute inflammation. Let's start. Now, whenever I talk about the acute inflammation, we have learned so much till here. Okay, acute inflammation, I'll do it in another video, okay?